Welcome to
That's High Praise,
a Nicolas Cage podcast.
I am your host, VH Zest.
And I am your other co-host, Captain Nostalgia.
That's right. So it is July the 16th, and that is the movie theater debut of the most recent Nicolas Cage film, Pig.
Yeah, this is the first time in probably 2 years that I've been able to see not only a Nicolas Cage movie on the big screen, but also see it on opening night, because I was lucky enough to see Color Out of Space on the big screen and all of its majestic neon glory.
Which honestly, I really feel like I was thinking about this in the first act of this movie. I was like, man, like neon really sums up the past 5 to 10 years of Nicolas Cage's career. Just that word alone.
Yeah, so this is a weird case for That's High Praise, because I feel like the majority up till these recent two movies, we've been going back through the catalog of like, we're gonna pick a movie from the 90s.
Yeah.
Episodes with the other co-host Matt Basil, we've been saying, okay, we're gonna go and do one of these like weird straight to video movies that he's done, and that's all fine. But you look at the last two episodes we've done, this and Willy's Wonderland, and these movies could not be further apart from each other. And
that specifically,
just like tone wise, subject wise.
I ask because they're two of his most recent films,
color palette wise. But I am going somewhere with this is that it demonstrates you're wearing a Nicolas Cage shirt right now. It's a Black Flag ripoff, but it's the meme face.
Yeah.
And Nicolas Cage has kind of like become this like meme, but you look at something like Willy's Wonderland, which is just a fun film, but it has a lot of depth to it. And then you look at Pig, and Pig is just this straight up drama, but they're released 6 months apart from each other, and it just goes to show the just world masterclass of an actor that Cage is.
Yeah, just the depth is incredible. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're so right. I feel like too, like, I don't know. There's some similarities. I've picked on it up on that too. Like, that's something I was thinking about during this movie. Is like, wow, some of the most recent films of his is just like him in a car, and then when he gets out of the car, blood happens, and then when he gets back in the car, there's just like the movie calms down a little bit.
We did talk about that on the way to the movie. It's like Nicolas Cage's career is something light, like It Could Happen to You or Family Man, and then you have something like dark, like Mandy or Color Out of Space.
Yeah,
and it's just like or
Wicker Man, even
Wicker Man. Yeah, even that. But this is kind of like this. Full disclosure for listeners, Mike and I have not talked about any of our thoughts on this movie. We talked about Star Wars on the way home because I would not.
We had to avoid the topic.
Talk about Pig because we wanted it to be
fresh,
and we wanted to talk about it with you guys, and you guys kind of get to hear our
first thoughts.
Yeah. And so with that, I mean, I'm curious to see how you think I'm going to interpret this movie.
Dude, I same. That's how I feel exactly. Yeah.
Because I think we both walked into this movie with like different expectations, and before we even get into our thoughts or spoilers,
expectations,
I just want to throw this out there to any listeners that if you are coming into this movie expecting it to be this like gritty John Wick-esque movie with a pig, it's not that.
It has its moments. There are moments that I think on like a I guess, to be vague, action level, I didn't expect. They were a little surprising, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I was not expecting that either.
Yeah,
full disclosure, and neither one of us watched trailers for this movie. We were just like, Nicolas Cage got a new movie. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, I don't know about you, Josh. All I knew about this movie was like Nicolas Cage has a pig, and he has to go find it. That was it.
Yeah, that was about the genesis of what I knew as well.
Yeah.
But so let's get into this, man. What did you think of Pig? What are your thoughts?
I'm still like trying not to be emotional. Yeah. So a couple episodes ago we did It Could Happen to You, and if I remember correctly, I summed that movie up. If I used one word to sum that movie up, it would be wholesome. That movie was wholesome. This movie is very, very, very different, but the word I'm going to use is almost similar, and it's like, this movie is precious. Like, just, yeah. It's a lot. You go into it, and it's like, there's already a fully constructed world that you're having to learn, and that gets interesting, but I mean, my thoughts on the movie overall is just like, this movie is precious. It addresses so many things in such a simple, short, concise narrative, and it does not hold back at all. But it also doesn't, like, I've seen some Nick Cage movies in the past few years, and this is not a criticism, but I've seen a handful, such as Mandy, that have just been very over the top. This movie is not over the top either. It is perfectly balanced.
Yeah, I kept waiting for that moment.
Right, same.
There is a moment that we'll talk about here where it felt like you were going to get that.
Yep.
And there's another moment later in the film where he does get that, but it's more, the context of the scene is shaped more like, to pull from Mandy, the scene where he's in the bathroom.
Oh.
And he's just like drinking, and he's, it's after the death of his wife, and I think for me, this movie, we as we were walking out of it, there were a couple of guys behind us saying, this was oddly a wholesome movie. Like, this was not what I was expecting ever. And same. Like I didn't know what to expect. I knew this wasn't going to be John Wick. I knew this wasn't going to be Nobody. I knew this wasn't going to be in a realm of those types of genre fair movies.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting the landscape and of how they did it. And when you talk about this and sum this movie up, like, it sounds so ridiculous to say out loud.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like,
wow.
Especially when you're like talking about like the part of the reason why, like, Nicolas Cage is like looking for this pig is because it's stolen by people that are trying to get into the truffle game. And it sounds so crazy to be
man,
like,
yeah.
Truffles are like this real shady world, and it's like,
which I don't know how true that is, but like, yeah, they treat truffles like they're a drug, and they treat like just like top tier culinary experiences in restaurants like it's the freaking mafia. That's exactly the way it's treated.
Yeah, and it's so bizarre, but like, this movie has like such a tone where everything is taken so seriously in it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of almost like fantastical in the way that it portrays things, but it does it in a delivery where it feels real.
It's so deliberate.
Yeah. Like I feel like everyone in that audience knows what it, probably has had to say goodbye to, like, a childhood pet, or have lost something that they've cared very dear to them, whether that is a person, a profession, just a pet, just a number of different things.
Yeah.
And so Nick Cage's journey throughout the course of this feels so relatable. And yes, you're getting into the world of, kind of like, as ridiculous as it sounds, like, truffles and high-end culinary arts. And it's weird that from my personal viewing experience for this movie was, I saw this right after Roadrunner, which we're gonna have an episode out. It's the Anthony Bourdain documentary, and just to kind of see like how themes in that movie kind of almost like mirror Nicolas Cage's Rob's journey throughout the course of this. Like, it's very interesting to say the least. But it's such a compelling character study.
Yeah, and the thing I love about it too, you're right. It's a character study, but it's not a character study of one character.
It's not.
It really isn't. There's so many just mirrors in this movie. You know, he has this. We'll call him his friend. By the end of the movie, they're friends. Yeah, he has this friend, and this guy basically just comes up to his house once a week and gets truffles from him. But he's the only guy he knows who can help him find his pig when his pig gets taken. And so this whole movie is this journey of like him kind of taking this kid under his wing. And yeah, like him trying to find his pig, trying to reconcile how he feels, and this kid trying to like prove his worth to like his dad and try to figure out like why his mom is where she is. And it's wild.
Let's just jump into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess like let's start with the journey that Rob takes in this movie. Rob is the name of Nicolas Cage's character, who was Robin. This like very revered chef in Portland, and his wife died.
He was,
and he just kind of became a recluse.
Yep.
And so then you have Amir, who's played wonderfully by Alex Wolff.
Yeah, incredible.
It's all joking aside, it's super weird to see this kid with a mustache.
Yeah, it's weird to see him not look like a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. We both like loved him in Hereditary.
Yeah. And My Big Fat Greek Wedding too.
Was he in My Big Fat Greek Wedding too?
Yeah, he was.
See, I know him from that, and I oddly know him from the Naked Brothers band.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, so I've been really liking a lot of the career choices he's made recently.
Yeah.
And this is like another like nod into like his credits for as an actor. But I think for Cage's journey, as we kind of walk through it, like his whole thing is like it starts out as becoming a pig, but by the end it is finding a restoration for not only himself but faith in humanity.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So many of my favorite times in this movie, like my favorite moments, my favorite scenes is the correct word, they're just moments where there's just dialogue. It's just Robin, Cage's character, just dialoguing with someone about where they're at, where they once were, where they want to be. He's so like...
profound is the word that I want to use.
Profound is the word, yes,
because...
but like... Well, hold on. Like, what I was going to say is, like, aside from getting back his pig, he is the most selfless character in the film.
Yeah, he's very, and like every time like he opens his mouth, like it's very profound.
It is, yeah.
And there's two great examples of that. Is the scene where they go to like that high end restaurant because
oh my gosh,
they meet Chef Derek, who just happens to be. By the way, I just want to throw this out there. I would not be opposed to going to a high end restaurant. I choose not to go. Okay. Not just for the price, but for the portions. Because a part of it is you are getting a culinary experience.
Yes.
But
it's plating as much as it is anything else. Yes.
Yes, the Food Network has taught me that, and also having a former chef on staff here at Victims has also taught me that.
We should go sometime.
Huh?
We should go sometime.
I mean, I'm down for it. But anyways, but it happens that this chef at this restaurant also used to be is it like a busboy or something like that? Like
no, he cooked. He was like a
entry.
He was like a sous
cook.
chef.
Yeah,
he was a sous chef.
So he got fired twice. He got fired after 2 months of being there, and like Cage just like remembers these like really like intimate, profound details about him, and that scene, and then at the end where you have it's. We're gonna get into it, but like, Amir's dad gets involved into the plot, and what could have been I'm going to retaliate with brutal violence. I'm going to recreate the best night of your life.
Oh my God. Yeah. 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 And I love that. It's about Act 2. It's about the beginning of Act 2 that you get that scene with Derek, in this lunchtime reservation. Just so you can kind of get it. It's really wild. So that restaurant is owned by Amir's dad, but he has to call in a favor with someone else who knows his dad just to get a reservation. And that's really it seems really just kind of why are they pulling this far out of the narrative to get this reservation, kind of even in the plot. But it really goes to show that Amir and his dad are not on the same page. But it also goes to show that there's a really genuine, again, almost mobster level depth to just the culinary scene in Portland, which is just really cool, really great. This movie is amazingly tasteful and almost simple world building, just really good. But yeah, that scene, oh man, he's talking to, Rob is talking to Derek's character, and he's like, remember what you told me? Remember you told me when I fired you, you wanted to start a traditional English pub. What did you want to do? What was your main dish? And he starts talking to him. He's like, Derek, this isn't real. None of these people are real. This food isn't real. This isn't what you want to be doing. You're real. And everything that you wanted to do, and the guy was just saying, yeah, there's no money in it. People don't care about that. And he's like, that doesn't matter. And it's so I think the idea of being a sellout and that notion has been beat to death. And there's so many angles you can look at it with. But nevertheless, the idea of being true to yourself and who you are and your dreams, that can never be praised enough. And he just goes for it in this scene. And it's inspiring is not a good enough word.
It's this very tender moment, you're right. But
yeah.
it reminds us that the things that bring us joy in life aren't the things that are going to always pay the bill.
Yeah, it's not success, right?
And I think sometimes that we get so wrapped up in this notion of the quote American dream, and even if you're listening to this, I know we have a lot of listeners from around the world, but I say that I think that there are some times that other countries look at America and think this is the American dream. Like the American dream is still living, and if you're in America, it's dead. So you have these these notions that you're chasing kind of almost like a fool's errand, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's we do live in this time where it's easier now than ever, I feel to follow your dreams.
Yeah.
And sure, they might not always pay the bills, but it's, this right here, right now, us talking about something as simple as a Nicolas Cage movie.
Yeah. As always.
This really helps provide an outlet for, to let people know that they have value and worth, and that there are suicide prevention resources or mental health resources wherever you're listening to this right now. Just click the links in the descriptions. But to also be reminded that this right here, this is my passion.
Right.
This is what I love to do. And if you guys know me, Cassette has joked about it several times on episodes of Victims that I'm one of the hardest. He's always said that I'm a really hardworking guy, and this entire week and the weekend that we're doing all of these podcast recordings is in the midst of just doing so much stuff and having family come in and through. So, but at the end of the day, this is the heartbeat.
Yeah.
I don't want to say this is why I wake up, but this is my driving force and my passion.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, you're so right. There's this line, and I'll be honest, I'm gonna butcher it. I don't really remember it. We saw the movie once, it's fresh, but Amir's dad. It's later actually in the movie. It's definitely second act. It's into the second act. Basically his sitting room with Amir's dad, and he's this rich, like, owns restaurants, high-end cook, and he's kind of standing looking off in the distance, and he's like, basically the line that he's saying is, I can sum it up in saying that, like, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you own all these things, you do this, you find success, whatever. It's all you have, and it goes away. And it's so, like, it's not really that profound. I feel like it's something that, like, we all kind of inherently know, but the fact that it's said by the person it's said by in this movie, this guy who's, like, just in a position of authority and power and things like that, it's just like, wow. Like, they're really driving the point home that, like, if you're not, like, not selfish, that's not the point, is not to be selfish, but, like, the point is also to not give up on yourself, and like, there's so much more value in moments than there is in success.
Yeah, and I love, like, those themes that are woven throughout the course of this movie, because this movie reminds us as viewers that life is precious.
Yeah.
And there's another line that Rob says in it, and he says that there are very few things in this life that we get to care about.
Yeah.
And it's a kind of a sad, morbid truth, but there are very few things that we get to care about in this life. Because, I can probably count on one hand, like, yes, like, I love things like Nicolas Cage movies and horror movies.
Sure.
But those things will never bring me joy the way that, my relationship with Jesus or my wife, or even, doing Victims and Villains and That's High Praise and Abyss Gazing. Like nothing will bring the kind of joy and satisfaction that I get from letting people know that, you are not alone.
Yeah.
If you're going through depression, just understand that there are resources and that there are people out here that are rooting for you to stay here on this planet and in this life.
Yeah.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Yeah. And that's so much, like, probably my favorite scene in the movie is, it's just a cooking scene. It's just Amir and Rob, and they're cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And you see them, like, you see them just, cracking's not the word. What's the word? Garlic. When you, like, you crack it? I don't know.
Spatchcocking.
What?
Spatchcocking, I think is what it's called.
Yeah. You, like, smash garlic. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the way that they cut the quail.
Oh, no. Oh, there was that. Yeah, too. Or they were breaking the back. Yeah. So they, but they're like, they're just preparing food, and they've got two, like, whole quail. It was a really cool moment. I used to farm, and I used to, like, I actually used to prepare whole quail. It was really cool. yeah, just really awesome scene. They don't really show quite where it is. Like, you have somewhat of an idea, but it's just this dimly lit kitchen, and it's romantic. Like, there's no other word. Like, it's such a like intimate, like romantic scene. And then as they're kind of finishing up, Amir goes to this stained glass door, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, I made you dinner." And it's just like, you have to understand too, like, Amir almost doesn't have a relationship with his dad. He said multiple times in this movie, like, we don't have a relationship. And the thing that struck me so much about this is, like, at this point in the movie, the Rob character is basically 99% sure that this is the man who has his pig. It's what the whole movie's about, is trying to get his pig, and he makes him dinner. And I was just like, I know that he has a motive, but this takes like specific, dedicated, intentional errands and time and specificity. And it's just like, you don't like, yeah, he has an ulterior motive, but the idea of like loving your enemy or having like a table set before, like in the presence of your enemies, that's never been so just like visually clear to me before this scene. It is astounding.
Oh, you're 100% correct. And I do want to kind of get into the dynamic and kind of the history of Amir and his parents and their relationship. But I do want to address that, that enemy thing too, because I think it's, especially in today's like culture, it's so easy just to like be like, I don't agree with this person, they're now my enemy.
Right.
And this movie, like, I feel like on so many levels, like, speaks to like just some of like not only the social issues that we have, that we experience, and how to properly deal with them in our world to see true change. Yeah. But also too, kind of like, the mental health that comes with such things. Mm-hmm. And when the dinner scene finally commences, it's it's exquisitely shot. Mm-hmm. And Rob brings out one for Amir's dad, one for Amir, one for himself, goes back, grabs the wine, grabs the wine glasses, and he sits down right beside Amir's dad after this guy's already told him, like, look, if I see you again, I will basically
just threatens him,
break you.
Yeah.
And he just sits down, eats, takes a bite. He's like enjoying his handiwork, which there's nothing more satisfying than cooking for yourself and then eating it.
And it being good. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't cook for myself very often, but when I do, and I'm just like,
yeah, dude, those barbecue fries. So good.
Yeah, I did cook for you last week.
They're awesome.
But he like has this like moment with like Amir's dad, where Amir's dad looks at him and he's like encourages him to like pick up the knife. He gets like a couple of bites in and takes a swig of wine and just goes to his office and just breaks down. Like that act of kindness. Yeah. After a threat. Yeah. Completely broke this man. Yeah. And absolutely. I think that just goes to show that like the random acts of kindness that we as human beings can do for people as they go out into the world can really break bitterness. It can break and it can even save someone's life. Yeah. Absolutely. I really want to stress that.
You're just showing someone their value.
Yeah. And I really want to stress that too, is like one of the things that I think more than anything that can happen is that, it doesn't have to be, we think that we have to like go out and like spend thousands of dollars to make a difference in someone's life. And it's like, like you can hold the door for someone, compliment them
pay for food,
shirt, pay for food. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be this like very profound thing. Like at when we were, doing comic cons every week. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things to do is like I would always kind of have that Justice League moment where Barry's like, just save one.
Yeah.
And so I would always like stop like cosplayers, and I would just like be like, hey man, can I take a picture with you? Can like
Sure.
just
validate them.
Just talk to you for a couple minutes. And like I remember we were tabling at this one in this one convention, and this lady was dressed up as Alana from Aquaman. And I asked her how many people like had complimented her. It was like towards the end of the convention. She's like, "You guys are the first ones."
Wow.
And so I just like stopped and I was like, "Look, let me just ask you questions. Like, how did you do this? Like, because it just looks incredible." And if you guys have seen Aquaman, I just want to say that this was not like Act 1 Alana. This was like after he finds her before he gets the trident Alana. So like lots of like intricate like little details that she wove into it.
Yeah.
But it made the entire difference the rest of the day for her, because she circled back around probably like 5 or 6 more times.
That's awesome.
And just validating someone's experience and existence and these random acts of kindness, they go a lot. And sometimes those random acts they build and actually remind people that they are validated as humans. And so you start to see things like depression and suicidal tendencies also dissipate.
Yeah. So there's in the movie, basically Amir is just talking to Rob about his parents, and Rob's just asking him like, "Where's your mom? What happened to your mom?" And you get the idea that they're not together. It's not explicitly said, and he's like, "Oh, she killed herself," which I guess like is not so surprising with someone kind of where she was. And yeah, it's really vague, but it's really like you get it, you totally understand, and it's really interesting. And he implies that his dad is just like, he's just in there with his work. He's just there. He's got it made, and Robin's like, your dad sounds horrible. And he's like, he kind of reiterates, he's like, the fact that he doesn't support you or take care of you. And it's just moments like that, so intentional. And he's like, why don't you work for him? He's like, I will, Amir says. And he's like, he just wants to prove himself, so much of the time. And it's really interesting. Like, so the Rob character is living out in the woods with no phone, doesn't own a watch. You see him at one point putting D batteries into a boombox to listen to a cassette tape. Just really primitive. But you never get the sense that he's lacking ever. And throughout the movie, he only has things to offer people. And it's amazing. It's just this amazing dichotomy between him and the people around him that are just like, driving Camaros, which are just the staple of every Nick Cage movie now, and wearing suits and stuff.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. It's just funny. It's really wild. I feel like there's so many things I want to say, but I don't know what to say next.
Well, so do me a favor, since you have your phone with you, pull up your calculator.
Oh, my calculator.
App real quick, and
okay.
I just kind of want to. Amir specifically talks about in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So take 130.
130.
And multiply that by 25. What is that number?
3,250.
That is the number of suicides that are attempted every day.
Dang.
Yeah, and so there is that moment where Amir has made Rob breakfast, and he says, hey, like, my mom killed herself. And it's one of the, for me, I feel like that was kind of the hardest scene to watch, because for him to as he was talking about it, he basically was like, for someone like her, like, there was no other way. And there was just that sense of dread and just like hopelessness.
Yeah. And
then you kind of find out later on in the movie that like his mom didn't actually die.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting too, because I kind of wonder, They imply that his dad is keeping her alive, which is wildly interesting. But it's never like really confirmed. Like, did she attempt suicide?
See, I read that scene like she did attempt suicide.
That's kind of same.
And I feel like it's just kind of like simpler for him to kind of just be like, yeah, like she's dead.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, rather than kind of going into this like family like saga.
Yeah. I mean, which he already kind of does, but it's still deep.
But you have like, and so I love that scene between Rob and Amir's dad. As Amir's dad's walking out of the frame, Rob asks him the question, were you always like this? Or did you just become like this after she died?
Yeah.
And it's this moment where he kind of has to like readjust himself, and he's like, man, like, I don't know who I'm dealing with here exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting to kind of see that particular scene, because it kind of makes Amir's father a little bit more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Where grief is one of those things that when it happens and when it kind of comes, especially when you lose someone to suicide, or even attempted suicide, you as the person that you're in relationship with it, you feel like a failure.
Yeah, you feel defeated. Yeah.
Exactly. Like you feel like, what could I have said? What could I have done differently? And I remember like when I lost someone to suicide, like for almost like a month afterwards, there would not be one day that would go by where I was like, I would just be like replaying like certain scenes and conversations, and I'm like, how could I have said this differently, or how could I have done this differently? And
yeah,
and it impacts so much, and you kind of see that hurt through both Amir and his father, that this is something that they both feel defeated on.
Yeah.
To the point where I think the fact that she's still on life support after this event takes place, has caused not only this rift between the father and son, but it has secured it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
There is that point like you just talked about where Rob's like, why don't you just go work for your dad? And he's like, well, I got to make a name for myself. And I think that he kind of sees the shady practice of his father, and he wants to make it on his own.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. I think too, there's some sort of like almost like surrogacy, almost like with Rob, where like, he's driving this Rob character around and stuff, and he doesn't really have to prove anything to him.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the point too where he starts to feel for him, starts to drive him around, not out of frustration, but out of genuine care. And he shows too. So there's a scene. The scene I didn't like. There's this scene where I didn't quite understand it, but it's basically in this underground like fight ring.
Whoa! First rule: you can't talk about it.
Oh my god. So it's really interesting. Again, it kind of goes into the whole restaurant mafia thing, but the idea is that like you put down your name, and depending on how much weight your name carries, people will put down more money, and then basically the last person to put down like their ante, if you will, has what I gathered to be about 30 seconds to just wail on you. You put your hands behind your back and they just wail on you. It's not fun to watch. But basically, like, you get the idea that like the Robin character does it because the guy running the fight ring could have better information on his pig, on the whereabouts of this truffle pig. And it's really hard to watch, but from that on, you really get like, that's where the Amir character really starts to like feel for this guy and really like maybe even admire him and just what he's willing to do for this creature that he loves. Yeah, and you get, like I said, you get this real sense of like surrogacy almost, where he's like following him around, but also like this guy's like really giving him the time of day. He doesn't have to work for him or like measure up to him like he does with his own dad. This guy's just like, more or less like willing to trust him. And there's this really amazing scene that it's probably really simple, but to me it was like really profound, where is before the dinner scene. They needed dinner preparations, and Rob is like, he up until this point he's been a little like hesitant to like really share who he is with people, and he is talking to Amir. He's like, he writes a list for him, and he's like, get these things and meet me. And he's like, I can't get these things. And he's like, tell them I sent you. And he's like, you want me to use your name? And it's just so profound. It's so like, it's like, I thought of like, I guess royalty, like a king. You know, if something is done in the name of a king, that thing gets done. Just no questions. You know, and it's so just like really, really cool. This just automatic. You can say it's earned, but you know, here either way, like just this trust that he has for Amir. It's amazing.
One of the things too that on that note that I would even specifically talk to would also be the scene, particularly about like, because like Fight Club basically like changes the dynamic. I'm gonna call it for what it is. That scene in particular, like, I mean, it just completely changes the dynamic, not only of their relationship,
yeah,
but who he is.
Yeah,
because you know, here you have a pioneer of the Portland culinary scene.
Yeah,
like the film, like it speaks it on multiple occasions, where it's like Portland's scene like wouldn't be what it is right now without your touch, without your influence.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, I brought up Anthony Bourdain earlier in the show, where here you have a guy that quite literally is in real life, you know, had this really success story where he was struggling paycheck to paycheck, wrote a best-selling novel. That novel spun off into a traveling show, which spun off into a couple of different challenging shows. He sacrificed a couple different marriages for this. And eventually, in the last few years of his life, like the fame, the traveling, like everything just became exhausting, and just he just basically wanted to become what Rob became.
Yeah.
And here you have this like guy that's like pioneering,
yeah,
you know, the very things that, you know, now are so common in this area of Portland. And, you know, the Fight Club scene, it is extremely hard to watch because, you know, and that's the one scene where I honestly thought that I was expecting it to kind of go differently.
Yeah.
Because, like, I was like, all right, this is where the John Wick angle kind of kicks in.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for him to kind of, you know, be surprised. But no, he's like, look, I'm going to go to the ends of the earth for this.
Yeah.
And I think that also says something about the relationship, and also the mental health importance of animals and pets.
Yeah.
Specifically because I think we sometimes discount that just because a movie revolves around a dog or a cat or a certain animal, that you have certain expectations, and it's like, oh, well, I can never understand this, you know, this whole like John Wick or Robin Felt thing, because like I've never been close to an animal like that. And from someone that is a mental health advocate, from someone that also does from time to time still struggle with mental health issues, my animals have been one of the best forms of therapy.
That's wild. That's so interesting to me, because I think like, and I don't say this to like contradict you, that's not like what I want to do, but I've also seen people like, they have animals and their attachment to their animals, the help that they get from their animals, the like just peace or whatever you want to call it, they get from their, or solace probably is a better word, they get from their animals, like, is enough for them. And I've seen a lot of people like that put themselves in a position where like they won't get close to other human beings, and they won't take risks on human beings, and they won't take risks on like really overcoming some of their mental health issues or some of their trauma or their emotional issues or things like that, because they already have like solace in this non-human creature.
That's what you see here with Rob, because it's when he does go, when Amir is sent on those errands, that is when it's finally revealed to the audience that Rob had a wife, and she died, and the amount of time between her death and the events of the movie are the exact amount of times that he actually is a hermit, is a recluse, and has had the pig. And so it makes sense that, and one of the reasons that I talked about it in the beginning of the show was that so much of his journey in this movie is his restoration and placing faith in humanity again. Yeah, and it's amazing. And I think really by the end of the movie, so at the beginning of the movie, what you see is a broken down hermit who cannot quite come to grips with the fact that his wife is gone, and he's finding solace in this pig that he loves, which is fine. You know, I mean, it's definitely a great point to start with. It develops from there beautifully, and you understand it. You know, whether you've had like an animal companion like that or not, you definitely understand losing a person and then finding companionship thereafter. You understand that, you know, and what you get by the end of the movie is, you know, one of the last lines, if not the last line, you find out before then that he never needed the pig to find truffles. He's like, the trees tell you where they are. He's like, but I love her. You know, and it's just this understood thing. And but by the end of the movie, you know, and he doesn't have his pig. He looks at Amir and he's like, I'll see you Thursday. You know, and it's you're right. It's so much of the journey is him relearning how to place his faith back in humanity, learning how to be okay, learning how to say goodbye. It probably in more ways than one, because you know, I think so much goes back to that dinner scene where it's like he can't get his wife back, and you know what? Neither really can Amir's dad. But he can get back is an experience of the best night that he ever had with her, and the meal that Rob never forgot about, and that, you know, obviously the dad never could forget about. You know, and it's beautiful, and I think, like, I didn't think about this so specifically until we started talking about this in this very conversation, but, like, what I see by the end of the movie is a stark contrast to the beginning. That at the beginning, you have this guy cooking food and putting the food down on the floor for a pig. And yeah, he loves the pig, and the pig's his pet, and that's awesome. But this is the best cook that Portland's probably ever seen. Mm-hmm. And I just immediately think of, like, you can't cast your pearls before swine. Like, so specifically. Like, no matter what you're trying to get from, quote, the swine, from that, like, whatever need you're trying to meet, whatever solace you're trying to find in that, like, supplementary thing, who you are and what you have to offer, is so much better put toward people who recognize that value. How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today. Sometimes trauma, I would argue, it doesn't allow you to do that.
That's fair.
And
sure.
There's one scene in particular that I want to pull from is the scene in the first act where we see him place the batteries into the boombox.
Yeah.
And he picks up this cassette tape and it says "For Robin."
Yeah.
And he plays just a little bit of it.
Yeah.
And stops it.
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of losing his wife, the world that he knew.
Yeah.
Is wrapped up in that one cassette tape.
Yep.
And it is not until after he loses the pig that he actually has to go actually is able to play. That's actually how the movie ends.
Yeah, as he faces the cassette tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is such a satisfying closure.
Oh yeah.
But so much of his journey that he had to go on had to happen for him to grow, because he's almost kind of forced, because he loves this thing so much.
Yeah.
He's so forced to kind of do it. And to your point about casting, don't cast pearls before swine. He goes back to his old home where he lives.
Yeah.
And he has that great scene with the young child that is living in his house now, talking about the orange
persimmons.
the persimmons tree. He has that the person that took over for his restaurant turned
baker.
it into a baker.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just kind of seeing all of these scenes, to go back to Derek's scene, or to even going back to the dinner scene that we've just keep coming back to. There's so much that he goes through on this journey, but he is really, as subtly as possible, is facing his demons, for lack of a better word.
Oh yeah, intimately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, my gosh.
But I feel like you need those character moments for him to arrive at this 15-year journey of closure and trauma, that healing, as it might not have taken place, but the process is beginning.
Yeah. Yep. That's very true. And you kind of see that. The very last scene is just him sitting on his bed, he looks at his pig's bed, and the pig's gone. And he just looks up. And it's kind of top lit, so his face is kind of shining a little bit, and that's it. And it's just wow, he just kind of has hope, and I'm not saying that, again, this might be controversial, and take it with a grain of salt if that's what you need to do, but I think part of me kind of wonders, man, as much as he loved that pig, I wonder if he ever would have found that hope and healing and that journey with humanity again, if it weren't for losing it.
Yeah.
And
that I love there's a Memphis Mayfire quote that says, "My darkest times are the times I grow." Mm-hmm. And I love that line, because it reminds us that sometimes life's harshest journeys yield the most growth from us.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for me going through the loss of a friend to suicide, or even my own depression and anxiety and suicidal desires, I don't know that we would be here talking about this podcast. I don't know that you would have abyss gazing. I don't know if you would have victims and villains, because so much of that path has been wrapped up into the journey of what I experienced all those years ago.
Yeah. And
I just want to say that I've been able, because of those journeys, I've been able to not only gear it towards advocacy here, but also been able to kind of help people and also remind them that they're not alone.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned trauma earlier, and how sometimes like really trauma is like, you don't always respond the best way or the most healthy way to things because of trauma. But it's also like, man, not that I wish trauma on people by any means, but how you respond can be so valuable. You know, if you respond in a way that's like, that's brave, and that is wanting to be hopeful, that is wanting to push forward and find healing and find hope, then like that trauma is just so valuable. And not only is it valuable for you, it's valuable for so many other people. You know, I think the thing that I can't stop thinking about right now is just Batman. You know, like, it sucks that so much of his life is defined by the loss of his parents, but it doesn't suck for Dick or Jason or Tim.
Even
or
Alfred.
Or Alfred, yeah.
You know, that one simple act of trauma, like, it spun off this entire, family, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I hope Dominic Toretto's listening to this right now. But you even kind of see it with, some of the other characters that have rebounded and really poured into that. You know, you talk about Dick also being an orphan.
Yeah.
And sure. You also have the iconic Killing Joke, which we also did an episode on way back when.
Yeah.
But so many people remember that for the Joker origin story, but also at the same time it's the transition period between Barbara being Batgirl, being Oracle, because she's paralyzed by the Joker. Another traumatic event that happened for her, but because of Bruce, she was able to say, I'm going to take this trauma and I'm going to give it purpose.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Again, not to say that, like, not to wish trauma on anyone, but it's just amazing, like, how valuable a responsible response can be to trauma.
Yeah, and I really want to link. We did a couple years ago. We did an episode called "Trauma and Therapy" with Heather Leach, who is actually a licensed professional when it comes to. I don't remember her exact title. She's LPC, I think. But I'm gonna link it in the show notes below for you guys, because cool. I think that it's a very valuable episode to consider and to listen to, because of just her insights on all of the years that she's done with trauma, and also some of the more intimate, somewhat details that she brought. It's been a couple years since it's been at least a year since I've listened to it myself, but
sure.
Yeah, I think she had some really, really great insight. So, but this movie, I feel like, just handles its subject matter so eloquently.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's one of the things that really help it elevate it to one of Nick. So it's really weird to talk about this film as a Nick Cage film.
It really is.
Given the fact of, you look at the last few years that he's done, and I mean, he's done some really crappy things, crappy movies. As far as like, Grand Isle wasn't like his best. I'm trying to think of like other movies that like I've seen, like Mom and Dad was okay. But then he's done like these like really like louder than life gems like Mandy and Willy's Wonderland, and you're like, I don't understand. And like, this is such a somber, beautiful film that like, this is the classic Nick Cage. Like, this kind of almost to me feels like adaptation era Nick Cage.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Where it's just this very like somber but yet deeply moving piece of cinema.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It is a film. not a movie.
True. So on that note, is Pig worthy of high praise?
Oh, easily. Yes.
Yeah, I have to 100% agree. Yeah. Not only is this movie worthy of high praise, but this may be one of the best movies of the year.
Yeah.
By
far. For me, it is the best movie of the year.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
Cage, Wolf. I knew the two of them being in the same movie was going to be special, but I didn't really realize how special it was going to be until now.
Yeah.
And Alex Wolff, like, the dude just is a name to kind of keep your eye on. Like, he did a fantastic job in Hereditary.
Yeah.
But he
also about familial trauma. Beautiful story.
Really here, I think that he kind of elevates to a new level of his craft.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great. This movie, it's incredible. It's so well balanced. It's so concise. It is not long, and it does not need to be. It does not overstay its welcome. It does not it doesn't ever seem to overcorrect or be over the top. It doesn't underplay or undersell any of its themes or motifs.
It's really simple too.
It is. It's a very cut and dry, simple narrative. It's not like if you're a big fan of those movies where like something comes out of left field and it surprises you. It's just not that movie.
I would disagree. Like there are some scenes in here that like surprised me.
Yeah, but it's not like
Fight Club.
It's not Fight Club. It's not any of James Cameron's quote films. It's nothing like that at all. I mean, if anything, I was surprised by how even tempered it was. There were so many times I wanted it to get violent or bloody or something, and it didn't. It just didn't, and it didn't need to.
Yeah, I think me and you both walked in here thinking that this was going to be this like kind of like really sappy or
like a revenge
really
story
violent.
Yeah,
like that's kind of what we were expecting.
Yes.
And it's not like it's just this beautifully articulate. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I mean, this film just leaves me at a loss for words.
Yeah.
And
yes.
there were I think there were both times that you talked about like you almost getting emotional. Like,
oh, dude,
I almost like wanted to kind of like start crying at certain scenes.
Yeah. So I teared up at the dinner scene, but starting from, and this is like the beginning of the second act, just to give you guys some perspective. Starting from the scene with Derek at the lunch reservation, that's when I like.
Which we should also mention was like very subtle.
Yeah, honestly, it was. There's a lot of subtle comic relief, but starting from then on, I was like trying not to cry the entire rest of the movie.
There's definitely a lot of movies. There's definitely a lot of scenes, and it's like the characters like don't even have to say anything. Like the scene in particular where Amir's looking at Laurie's grave is just like,
oh man,
haunting.
Oh dude,
nothing said. He's just staring at it.
Yeah,
but
I think for him too, it's also just like he thinks of his mom as dead, but she's not.
Yeah,
and I think it's like that's this weird moment for him, especially like kind of being taken under the wing of Robin to some extent.
Yeah.
Just sort of realizing the actual difference between losing someone and kind of where he's at.
Yeah. Well, you guys can check out Pig. It's now playing in select theaters. I also, too, want to highly recommend this movie.
Yes.
Even if you guys like have a chance to like rent it. I don't know if it's doing video on demand right now as of this recording. But if you're listening to this after it's come out on Blu-ray or physical media or digital, go watch it, please.
It better come out on tape. Oh my goodness.
This is a strange movie to want on a VHS.
Why is that? It's a movie.
Touche. I know we talked about on Willy's Wonderland that Score to Settle was going to be our next episode. This episode was just kind of like a a surprise. Like it just kind of like was like, oh, there's a theater in town that's playing Pig. Let's go see it and podcast about it. Like literally, I don't think
waste not, want not.
I don't think I had not originally anticipated podcasting about this one. And then I was like, I'm just going to throw it out to you if you want to do it.
Dude.
And you were just like, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So Score to Settle is going to be the next one we're going to be doing. Matthew is going to be bringing his triumphant return.
There you go.
There we go. But until then, where can people find you online?
Yo. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at mulletstash. Yeah, and then you can follow at VHZest too if you'd like. I really need to do more with that account. If you just do me a favor, follow that account and then message it a lot, that'd be really, really great.
You guys can find me on Letterboxd. I'm at Captain Nostalgia, and you guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch, and go to victimsandvillains.net where you guys can find all of our social media, become a Patreon supporter, help us get mental health resources into schools and conventions. Also find movie reviews, other episodes of That's High Praise, Abyss Gazing, and Victims and Villains. But most importantly, you guys can also find suicide prevention resources. So until next time, keep on caging, and remember, collect all the truffles.